Welcome to Focus on Liberia on the marketplace where we talk everything finance and economics. I am your host, Gabriel Carter. I am here with my co host, Larry Kennedy, and we have Theo from Liberia in the studio with us today. Today, we're going to be talking about corruption and its impact and its economic impact. So, corruption and its economic impact. Again, wherever you are, again, it's focused on Liberia. Wherever you are, please take an hour and a half, join us, share the show, and let's take an hour and a half and discuss about corruption and its economic impact on Liberia, on its economic impact was obviously Liberia. Uh, Larry,
Hey Gabriel, how you doing?
good, good, good. Nice
All
to see
right.
you. All right,
Good, good. Tia, how you doing there, buddy?
Well, I'm doing great, Lara and Gabriel. Well, you guys are
Okay.
also doing great as well.
perfect.
Yeah.
We are.
Hanging in there, man.
All right.
Okay.
So today our topic is corruption and its economic impact. We know the how ill corruption is. We know how prevalent it is in our economy. But today we want to take our time to look deeply into how it impacts, economically, from you and I to everybody in general in the country. So this is what we want to look into today. So this is what our topic, what is going to be today. So again, Larry, I will let you take that away. So what we'll do, we'll have that discussion, and then maybe 45 minutes in, maybe take a break. If not, then we'll take comments from the audience, and then we'll go into the second half of the show. Uh, so I'll turn that over to you, Larry.
Yeah, I think it's important that we have a interactive session. Let the people watching put their comments in. We'll pick up those comments and discuss it because
Hmm.
this is an important topic, right? When you have a lot of the emerging markets, a lot of the underdeveloped countries, the
Right,
Liberia, Sierra Leone, all those
right,
countries that make up the ECOWAS, a lot of these countries do not develop because they're being held back by highly, highly corrupt societies. We hear
hmm,
it from, presidents coming one after the other. They're all saying the place is corrupt, corrupt, corrupt. And for whatever reason, we can't seem to change that.
hmm.
What's making it even worse right now, we have situations where the whole thing with Sheikh Kante, right?
Uh-huh.
Now we're getting into the international space where people are seeing Liberia as a money laundering hub.
Yeah.
This is bad because you're going to have situations where it would be extremely difficult for businesses, for people to do business in Liberia. Because
Right.
whenever you need to wire money to Liberia, when a lot of the international banks are flagging you as a money laundering hub because of the anti-money laundering laws and all of
Hmm.
the things that we have in place,
Hmm.
the financial integrity groups we have here in the US,
Yep.
it makes it difficult to send money to Liberia.
Correct.
So what does that mean now? And if you can, if you don't have capital, if you don't have money, how are you going to develop your economy?
Right.
Economies grow based on how much money they can bring in
Right.
to grow their economy.
Right.
So let's have this conversation. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
How is corruption hurting the people in Liberia?
Right.
How is corruption? How can we actually deal with corruption once and for all?
Right.
I don't think you can actually eliminate corruption 100%, but you can minimize it to a level where
Correct.
it's not stopping the country from growing.
Perfect.
So
Yeah.
we'll interact with the people today, and we'll have
Right.
this good conversation, and we'll bring up some cases, some notable cases where nothing seemed to happen.
Yeah.
Why cases that are so visible? Why is it that nothing happened whatsoever?
Hmm. Okay. Tio, I think your appetite has been wet, and so as everybody else in the audience. Larry was able to do that for us. We just had our appetizer. The food is in front of us. I want to give you the option to you know introduce yourself, and then your audience as well. I think you're reporting from Liberia, so I think your audience might want to hear from you. Right.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Yep.
Well, I'm Theo Williams, FOL's reporter in Liberia,
Yeah.
and it feels good being on the show tonight. And I'm hoping that we can have a wonderful conversation surrounding this topic under discussion. So to our listeners in Redland, I want to say a pleasant good evening and welcome to another presentation. It's on Prom FM 105.5, and we hope that you will follow as well. And we will also give you the opportunity to weigh in as per our topic on our discussion tonight. So, Gabriel, that's it.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. So, Larry, I know you give us, pretty much like a highlight of what we want to talk about today. You mentioned Kante and his
Yeah.
case. Can you talk a little bit about about, his case?
Yeah.
Who, maybe I don't, if you don't feel comfortable naming names, don't name name, in terms of the people involved in the government, who were involved, the implication on the country itself, because that is his case is pretty much the epitome of what we call corruption in this prime case. Is a perfect example case of corruption. Uh, Pretty much, I think his case involved people in high places, and it may have touched up to the vice president. I think what I'm hearing, right? So what is that? What is his case? Maybe give the audience the base case of his case, and then talk about how that maybe impacting how that may be impacting everybody else, like you and I, an average Liberian.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So a lot of times we tend to think of corruption from a government standpoint.
Right.
There are crimes also where it's on the business side as well. Let's take Kante, for example. Kante was involved in what the US now see as a global threat, something called business email compromise.
Yes.
In fact, let me just, so there was
Hush puppy.
yeah.
All right.
So business email compromise when the director of the FBI, Christopher Wray,
Yeah.
he came before the US Senate and he testified. He said, look, business email compromise is a serious threat against the US banking system. So how does this whole business email compromise thing work? This is what Kante is doing. And if you haven't heard of it, it's important that you learn about this because people are getting scammed with this thing constantly.
Yeah.
A lot of times people receive messages and stuff on social media and they tend to click on links. You're just clicking on stuff. You got to be careful when you're clicking on stuff because people can hack into your phone, people can hack into your email. So let me explain how this whole business email compromise thing works and why it's a major threat against the US and why the US now is grabbing people. I don't care where you are on this planet. And I don't care. And you see, we'll touch on this whole thing with the government's involvement as well, right? So business email compromise, and I don't know if Dennis is still around to kind of share some of the information we have here. So if he's not available, I will explain it briefly. Okay. So this is the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation here in the U.S., Christopher Wray. This was when he was testifying before the U.S. Senate. He testified that business email compromise is a $26 billion a year threat, global threat. It is massive. And it's because of that. It's because of that. The U.S. government ran an operation, right? They ran this operation called Operation Rewire.
Yeah.
Operation Rewire led to roughly 281 people being arrested around the world. They picked up about 167 in Nigeria.
Okay.
And this is now people fail to realize that the U.S. can grab you no matter who you are, where you are at any time. If they can get into Pakistan and grab bin Laden, if they can go and arrest Manuel Noriega, sitting president of Panama, if they can grab the president of Ecuador and his brother, who was a legislator, the brother right now is in a U.S. prison. I think they have an extradition to bring the president here as well. They picked up people in Nigeria. They picked up people also in Turkey, in Ghana. They were grabbing people all over the world. So what this business email compromise does is the person will send an email to you pretending to be from a company. And if you were to respond to it, then they would start working with you, kind of feeding you, information. You think you're dealing with a legit business. This is what Kante was doing. These guys would send all this spam, we all know it as spam mail. They would send thousands of these spam mail out there. And then when people respond to it, what they would do, they would change maybe like the email address. Let's say your email address is G Carter, for example. They might put an extra C in there, you know? So when they do that stuff, they would send these emails to appear that they're coming from a legit source, right? Look, back in 2018, FBI received 20,000 complaints. That number has quadrupled. People are reporting losses of $1.2 billion. This is a major thing. This is what Kante was actually involved in. This is what he's involved in. So they would, and these are all organized criminals all over, all around the world. These guys would target your organization, or would target your company, or would target an individual, a wealthy individual. They would send these little phishing email. A phishing email is just, you know, they're trying to get information from you. Then once you reply to it, they can turn around now and start, you know, start using your information to access bank information. A whole lot of other things they can do with that. So when you have someone like Kante implicating government officials, when you have someone like Kante implicating some like government officials and things like that, it becomes concerning. You know, it actually becomes concerning, you know? So people need to be very careful in terms of when you're clicking on links in email, you know? So I see a couple of questions popping up over here. So, you know, I don't want to kind of burn up.
Yeah. So I have, you know, several, let me pose this question to Tio, and then I will give the opportunity to bring himself in. Tio, so we've just heard Alex talk about business email compromise, right? So business email compromise, he went over it, where, you know, somebody with email, fake email, when you're running a company and they took over your email, they took over the company email, and they fool you into wiring the company's money into that account, right? That's pretty much what it is. But the biggest part of that, it impacts everybody. That was part of what Kante, I'm sure you heard about the Kante case. That's why he was involved in. And he got arrested.
And Gabriel, let me just give a quick example that ties directly into Kante. Just an example that ties into him. He did exactly what this guy did. There was this hacker from Lithuania. This guy stole, listen to this. This guy stole $120 million from Alphabet. Alphabet is the parent company of Google, right?
Google, yeah.
This is a tech giant between Facebook, and he stole this money from Facebook and Alphabet. So what he did was he sent an email out pretending to be one of the vendors. This is exactly what Kante was doing. They're not paying attention. They started paying these invoices, and the guy stole over 120 million. In 2021, he got sentenced to prison. The FBI grabbed him in Lithuania. They picked the guy up and brought him here to the US, tried and everything. They only managed to recover about $70 million. That's how much they recovered out of the 120 he stole.
Wow.
How much time do you think that guy got in prison?
That's a good question. I don't know.
He only got about 5 years. But the reason why he got the 5 years, because he was implicating some higher ups. It wasn't just a little small, you know, a lot of times the people that cut deals, they get the little small fish. But when they're trying to grab a bigger fish in the pond, they will cut some of these deals.
The more you give up, the more they less your crime.
I wouldn't be surprised if Kante cuts a similar deal like that.
Yeah.
To burn some of the bigger fish who are probably part of his scam.
Yeah. I mean, Theo, my question, I think that is just maybe just add to the question. The question that I wanted to ask you is, what are you hearing in Liberia in terms of corruption directly or relating to this case specifically? Like when you talk to Liberians about corruption, what is usually their sentiment? What do you usually hear from them?
Well, thank you, Gabriel. Corruption in Liberia is a major issue. It's a serious topical issue back home.
Yeah.
You know, there were several cases of corruption in this country, past administration, current administration, and there were investigations conducted. fundings were out.
Mhm.
Up to present, nothing has been done,
Mhm.
that way somehow serve as a deterrent
Yes.
to avoid or recurrence. So the issue of corruption in Liberia is a major issue that all of us have to tackle. We all have to contribute our own quota towards tackling this thing called corruption in the country.
Yeah.
Honestly, from the schools, the churches, the mosques, not just the government though.
Thank
I mean,
you.
it cuts across.
Yes.
And so, I mean, it's a serious topical issues back home,
Yeah.
Gabriel, to be honest with you. If you go across now, if you just take your microphone out there to solicit views of Liberians regarding corruption, trust me, you hear all kinds of things. And the worst thing is, nothing is being done to even serve as a deterrent.
Yeah.
That is the worst thing about it.
No, thank you. And I think hence why we have people like Kante were able to go to the very top, because there's nothing that maybe may have, like you said, that may have served as a deterrent, that may have made him question himself, like, even though I'm doing this thing, I should be careful going all the way to the top. If there was some mechanism in place, he would have cautioned himself to
Yeah,
say, I can do it at the lower level, but I don't want to reach all the way to the top. But because there was nothing in place, so he feel emboldened and was able to get all the way to the top. And like Larry said, I think when you catch the small fish will start telling on the big fish, and I think that's
yeah,
for him, even though the case is quiet right now, I think that's what is happening in the background. And we won't be surprised if we hear, like I said, when you hear rope haul bush, I won't be surprised if we see things like that happening. But Dehpue, I know you joined us late. Welcome to the show. We are talking about corruption and its economic impact. Uh, Larry was able to, talk about the Kante case, how, he was able to get to the top, the method he used, which is the business email scheme. So that's what we're talking about here. But, you know, please do introduce yourself, and then you can chime in on that as well.
All right. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Larry and Theo. It's good meeting you today. And good evening to the people in Liberia and the people in the United States who are listening to us. This is a very broad and big topic, the issue of corruption and the impact on every economy, whether in Liberia or globally. In fact, what has been recently, there was a publication talking about, in terms of just a mining sector, what is happening in terms of illicit financial flow. You're talking about annual of, like they say, 200 billion or something like that for just illicit financial flow, and these are all result of corruption.
Mhm.
So, but then the thing about it, that you look at the bigger economy, you will not see much impact, but it's there. But the worst thing about it is that developing countries with small economy like Liberia,
Mhm.
whenever you talk about corruption, they have a worse impact.
Mhm.
So now it becomes, how do you measure the impact and how do you look at it? How is it actually affecting the economies of developing
Mhm.
nations? If you look at a country like Liberia, I will tell you that just a $10 million deal in Liberia is as heavy as just $1 billion deal in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah.
So imagine that, because the smaller the economy is, the
Yeah.
bigger the impact it is.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about corruption and someone, oh, why is it the thing is everywhere around the world, then you need to be looking at, the magnitude of your case instead
Mhm.
of looking at what other countries are doing. So if you look at a country like Liberia and say our GDP is $3 billion, and our budget is now estimated at 700 million. So out of that, if someone is talking about a deal, $25 million getting missing, and you know what proportion of your budget is that? It's a huge
Mhm.
proportion. So what do you do to minimize it? The best thing to do is to identify the source of the problem. And as I listen to Theo, and there where all of us supposed to carry a conversation. Who are those that doing it? Why are people doing it? whether you do a smaller one in the school, in the high school, it has serious impact. I can just give you a typical a small example in the high school in my community in Duazon that I serve on the board. This registrar made away with $5,000, and that itself, people damn, it has a serious impact. You know what happened is that people thought it was small thing. Parents were all angry, but in the end, it set us back and to get teacher salary, to pay back this money, it was a huge thing. So it's important that we start talking about it, start to discourage people from doing it, go after people, penalize people for whatever they do.
Hmm.
So Liberia is not poor, but the way we are managing it is making us to be poor more. And
Hmm.
the corruption is impacting the society. Many people are going to bed hungry because someone has taken away $5,000 or $6,000 that doesn't belong to him but belong to the system. So
Hmm.
the impact is very bigger. You see, people five $5 million getting missing in the health sector. You're talking about denying so many pregnant women and babies under five, increasing the under five mortality right there because they cannot have access to medication and drugs, so more people are dying. You're talking about depriving so many nurses of salary and they are not able to attend to patients and therefore they are also dying. You're talking about just $5 million getting missing in the education sector. The impact is like you are depriving hundreds of students from attending classes because the teacher didn't get paid and therefore he cannot go to class. And in short term is that he missing this at school, no money. But
Hmm.
in the long run, you see the whole generation being uneducated and becoming zogos and also disturbing the economy. So but in terms of assessing impact of corruption, it's huge. So
Hmm.
I think this is a very big topic.
Yeah,
But what is important now is how do we tackle it? Is what we're supposed to be looking at.
that is. I think that is a good segue. Larry, I think there is something that Tio mentioned that I want you, maybe you can chime in on it, that you can come in. So Tio, and I agree with Tio, right? He said even though we're looking at it at the higher level, with like the people like Tio and government official, but one thing he mentioned is that it start with all of us, right? In the schools, in the public, like so it's if we can start, you know, putting in, you know, I don't know how you will be able to, bring up people who are morally, morally upright to do the right thing within our schools, in our churches, in our, uh, public gathering. If we can start from there, then it trickled up, because it's these kids, that are in the publics, whether in schools or in churches, those are the ones who end up growing up and becoming other politicians, lawyers, and doctors, and our, eventually leaders, right? Um, so I think that I agree with him on that. So my question to you is, if you can maybe offer maybe one nugget of how do we, you know, begin. I know we will get to that point, but how do we begin that process of addressing this, you know, the beast called corruption?
The quick fix is to beef up the justice system. You
Yeah.
can't have deterrence without a strong justice system that is jailing people for corrupt behavior.
Hmm.
Look at all of the cases in the past.
Hmm.
The Korean business people money that was stolen.
Yeah.
Guy comes in, bankrupt, no cow. No cow never audited. No one knows what happened to that money.
Hmm.
You have situations where there are blatant instances of corruption.
Hmm.
No one gets prosecuted. So what needs to happen is you have to beef up the judicial system.
Hmm.
Look, England at one time was highly corrupt. Why do you think you have all of those pirates and stuff? They all were in England at one time.
Yeah.
Highly corrupt. You had a situation of the Triple Tigers, right? You had the what was it? It was Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong. Those
Hmm.
countries were highly corrupt. What happened? They came in, beef up the judicial system. That kind of slowed down corruption, and all of a sudden, Liberia that had a higher GDP fell, and now look at Hong Kong, look at
Hmm.
Taiwan, look at Singapore. Singapore has a very high GDP per capita compared to
Yeah.
where Liberia was in the '60s.
Yeah.
Why? Because there's a direct link between corruption and economic growth, between corruption and the people doing well. If we don't, if, but you see, here's what's going to happen. The U.S. now is taking a keen interest because when Biden put out last year that corruption is now a threat, a direct threat to U.S. national security, they started taking actions now to start grabbing people around the world and prosecuting them for corrupt activities. Long, long ago, it was, oh, hands off, we're not touching them. But that's not happening right now, because what the U.S. is doing, in fact, is you have a lot of U.S. government officials openly criticizing governments for corruption. I believe yesterday, the IMF held a meeting, and the managing director, Antoinette Syed, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, brilliant woman, love to listen to that woman. They had a meeting yesterday, the IMF, a governance meeting, discussing some of these key issues that we're talking about. Look, we're not going anywhere. A lot of countries in Africa are stuck in something called a poverty trap.
Yeah.
Corruption is another level of that poverty trap. Look at some of the people there who are walking around scot-free. These guys, if they were in any developed country, they would be jailed.
Yeah.
They would be absolute prison. And I see Jimmy Eastman making some good points here. My brother Dwalu also making some good points in terms of the in terms of this topic.
Right.
But one thing that needs to be clear, because a lot of African officials, government officials, they don't keep the money. Some of them don't keep the money in Africa because they don't trust the banks in Africa, so they don't bring it over to the US or over in Europe. By doing so, when you use the US banking system, whether to buy a property, to buy a house, or to buy some other asset, if you can't justify how you earn that money, the US will grab you and will seize that asset. This is what happened to Ronnie Sherman, right? Because he was hit with the Global Magnitsky Act.
Yeah.
For continual corruption. But yeah, I see some good comments over here. So I don't know, Tio, if you wanted to say something in addition to that. But to answer your question, we can do the bottom up, bring in ethics and a lot of stuff and train a lot of the young people. But I think we can do the top down approach where we need a very strong leader to come in, beef up the judicial system and start prosecuting people. Otherwise, we're not going anywhere. We'll just be in this vicious cycle.
Yeah, great, Larry. Just to pick up from where you stopped, I think if we want to minimize corruption as a country, I think there are several factors we have to take into consideration. One, the first thing is that we should not hesitate to expose corrupt activities, whether in government, whether in the private sector, whether in our schools, the churches, the mosques, wherever. I think we must expose whatever. Once it is about corruption, we should not shield them. That's the first thing, in my opinion. The next thing is to prosecute quote unquote corrupt officials or individuals, whether from the private sector or from the public sector. The next thing is restitution, not just prosecuting them, but they should restitute whatever they took unlawfully. I think when we take all of these factors into consideration, I think it's going to use some fruits and we'll move somewhere as a country. Yeah.
No, thank you. I think I agree with you. And
the next thing is gentlemen, we need to keep both private. We need to keep both private and public sector transparent. We need to keep it transparent. Create that high level of transparency.
Yeah.
So that there will be no way to get involved with corruption. Once the sectors are transparent, trust me, you can do anything. Yeah.
No, thank you. That is a great point you mentioned in terms of the transparency piece. And the reason why I even want to add to that is because if you look at a lot of organizations in Liberia, the banks, the NGOs, here, if you have nonprofits, you can go on their website and be able to pull up their tax returns and review them and see who their board of directors are, how much they're making, they read their balance sheets and everything. We have institutions in Liberia even one state-owned enterprises
Oh,
in Liberia that have no reports or
yeah.
whatsoever to look at, right? And another thing I think you and Larry mentioned is the accountability piece, right? Like we have, I'm not afraid to name names. You know, the no cow, the people responsible for no cow. Like I think there was a Salif family. You know, that bankrupt that institution. This was the national oil company of an entire country. You
Right.
bankrupt it and you just walk scotch free in the country. Scotch free in the
Yeah.
country. Nobody does anything to you. You see them people walking around it. It's what it does. It sends a direct message to not just the people coming up now, but the kids in school. They see that they feel that hey, if I get in the government too or any form
Yeah.
of leadership, if I do such thing, nobody will hold me accountable, right? And that's I think that's one thing that you guys are mentioning that I think I wanted to highlight on, like especially the restitution piece. Hey, if you're caught with somebody's money, if you stole state assets and you're caught and persecuted, you should, you know, they should make you pay that money back. Do your time and make sure you pay that money back. You know, whatever, if you can't pay it back, whatever assets you have, if you bought the assets in your mom's name, your father's name, your sister's name, your uncle's name, guess what? We go after them and freeze it as well, and take it from them, and make the state hold again for what you've stolen from them. So I absolutely agree with you on the restitution piece. Dehpue, I
But,
know you wanted to come in.
but before my brother Dehpue come in, and I want to throw this to Dehpue so he can help us on this one. So Dennis, if you can be kind enough, I want to see how sincere or how serious we are about beefing up the judicial system. So I don't know if you can share
I'll
this
pull it up. I'll
screen.
pull it up. Yeah.
Okay, great.
This
So
here?
this is the Ministry of Justice website.
Yeah.
Take a look at the list of the key staff.
Hmm.
So, Dehpue, who are they listing right now as the Minister of Justice on the Ministry of Justice website?
Unfortunately, I'm not seeing clearly, but
You can
It's
see it?
Frederick.
it's
Is that Frederick? Frederick, right?
Yeah.
Hereditary is a lit Hereditary picture still there.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think this site is obsolete. To be very frank,
So,
It's supposed to
how can we
update it.
be
That's what he's trying to
serious?
say.
How can we be serious about beefing up the judicial system when something as simple as, and what Tio was saying, transparency. How can we be transparent, beefing up the judicial system? We can't even update something as basic as the Ministry of Justice website.
Yeah.
They have Frank Chiru, the late Honorable Frank Chiru, who passed away in 2019, I believe, right?
Wow.
yes.
Almost 3 years ago,
Yeah.
and his
So,
picture is still up there.
uh-huh. So now Rema says Pro is putting a good question out there. So I don't know, touching that, Dehpue.
Yeah, definitely.
You
Please
know,
go for
you
that,
know,
and then we'll get some of the comments.
the issue of transparency and reporting in public sector is something that we have to fight. Uh, Now in the public sector, the NGOs, how many of them making available their public statement or financial statement at the end of the day? Companies making sure that they have their financial statement out there. These are things that we need to start with in terms of the high level. But one thing that there is that I'm glad that there's a need now for us to have a prosecuting power given to the Liberal anti-corruption. And for the public sector, we have a lot of laws on the books. One thing that I observed the first time is that my experience in government was they ask you to declare your assets. The letter will ask you, your appointment letter will request that you declare your asset after nomination. And the code of conduct, maybe I will encourage the media, especially to you and the rest of the people, you need to have a copy of that code of conduct. It's something very good written for the country, but it's not implemented. It requires that you make sure that you declare your asset and make sure whatever asset that is given to you as an official government should not be used for personal use. Contrary to that, you will be assigned vehicle and the vehicle will be used for all your family member and the rest of it. So when you have problem, that was the beginning of the corruption right there. Declaring what you have and what belongs to you is the first thing. And if you're going to be using it for personal use, it should be clearly stated why you want to use it at this time. And one thing we got to be doing now to reduce the waste of public resources is to ensure that once you declare your asset, it should also be published.
Mhm.
You know, let people know that okay, this guy is a minister of education, for example. Under the ministry, once you are appointed and you are nominated, confirming everything, you declare your asset declaration information, the brief, even though everything should not be detailed, but at least there should be a summary information about you. That essay is going to help the institution or other people to track what you are doing. I'm glad that the United Nations system is working with the civil society to see how best they can do the public, public sector, public official accountable in terms of Santa and the rest of the group are doing that now. But I think it's just a matter of having this thing for reporting purpose. But in actuality, we need to see that demonstration from the official, public official, and private sector official. Besides what Larry talked about, the website, this is the aspect of giving annual report, quarterly report. Uh, it's not follow up. The national legislature that's supposed to be following through with all of these things to make sure that look, how much you got, report what you got, and show it. They themselves are almost they are the giant or champion in these things. The first thing that we don't know what they do. They themselves are all involved into sector money.
Mhm.
They are also involved into implementation. They want to go to the Kante Development Fund to be a part of the implementation when they know that they are supposed to just be there as the one who approved the budget. So the whole system is colluded and convoluted with so many things that is hurting us. As I said earlier, $10 million, that's embezzled in Liberia it has wider magnitude on the economy than $1 billion that is taken away from the United States economy,
Absolutely.
or $1 million that is taken away from Ghanaian's economy. So we need to look at that very closely and say, how do we fight it?
Yeah.
The solution there is this. Besides what have been mentioned, it's good for people to be naming and shaming.
Mhm.
It is pathetic. I know that there's a law, whistleblower act in the country, but it's not being enforced. People supposed to be protecting the whistleblower. So for the government to make sure that the country is transparent, make sure you have the whistleblower act. In addition to what Larry was talking about, Rwanda, what they do when you are investigated and found guilty, you either be state bound or city bound. That means if you are from Ganta, they just take you to Ganta and you remain there until you pay back, you restitute what you stole. You're not gonna move anywhere.
Mhm.
If you are from that is a put social pressure on people, right? And you are being a minister and you are found guilty and say you're corrupt and you say
And
you're
they
going
send
to
you right
Ganta.
back to your county.
Yeah, you just live right by in the community. Everybody see you every day. Oh, that's the man who stole the money. That itself, but
It's a deterrent.
the children itself as a deterrent, the children coming on and all other officials, anybody who wants to be in the senior official or anybody who want to be a county official was thinking about, oh no, when I do this, I'll still have to live with people. Let me avoid this embarrassment.
Yeah.
So these are practical things that we need to do. The police, this is what is helping. The police are supposed to help us. We are not financing them. In fact, they're where we are giving more room. The
Mhm.
income of the people also is a contributing factor. Besides the income of the employee, if low income lead to low performance, and besides low performance is also lead to low taxes, and we'll have low taxes will also lead to corruption, convolution is going on all over the place. Look
Right.
at the electoral process. Another corruption is something we gotta go. Look at how our electoral process is marred by corruption.
Yeah.
Let me say this. People say, "Oh, why are you not talking about this? You were there before." I tell people clearly that we have a very bad system. The educational system we have is also corrupt, but the electoral process. You see, Liberians are now used to someone who gave them higher bid, higher cash, and amount of material to get
Hmm.
elected. They care less about how the person get the money. They
Hmm.
care less about where the person will get another money to give to them. But all they need is to see the guy just dishing them money out. So criminals and dishonest people excel faster in our country, the leadership nowadays, than someone sincere who is trying to be very earnest and sincere with them. And that itself is an incentive for corruption. Every time,
Yeah.
yes, this guy is doing talk and do. That in fact, the best word people use is say talk and do. Talk and do what? So it's something we gotta be looking at. Thank you very much, and let me
All
give
right.
to you.
Let's jump to the comments here. So maybe it will help us pivot or enhance the conversation that we're having now. Um, so I have a comment here from Dualu. He said the free flow of capital in and out of Liberia is heavily stagnating the Liberian economy. This is almost exclusively due to open and encourage corruption throughout the public space. Do you guys want to comment on that thing before we go on? Because I think I have
Maybe
a
Ansu needs to say a little bit more about what he means by the free
yeah,
flow
because
of
I
capital.
don't understand how
Yeah.
the free flow of capital in and out of the country, unless you're saying that is coming from within the higher ups, like leadership, um, in a kind of a
Yeah.
scheme to get it out, then I would say yes. But in terms of capital flow in and out of country, every time people wire money
So
there,
Ansu's a very smart guy, so
right?
I'm sure there's a reason behind his
Yeah. So
question. He probably need to
Dualu,
share a little
if
bit
you're
more.
on here, please do uh, clarify it or qualify your question or statement, please. Uh,
Let
so
me
there we go.
say this. Maybe I may just come in on that. Maybe him. A kind of free flow of capital is obviously is an opportunity for growth in the economy. But the new thing that there is that what is need to be done there is that knowing the source and what the inflow and outflow is about.
Hmm.
Let me say this: the last time we were discussing about the national budget under with Dennis Jai, we have a situation that currently the financial intelligence unit that's supposed to track assets and flow of funds and look at terrorist financing and money laundering. These people have less than the $1 million budget. And you have the EPS that's supposed to be personal security having $10 million budget.
Hmm.
Obviously, what's going to happen? In fact, the Anti-Corruption Commission,
Hmm.
look at this institution. How do you expect them to fight corruption? They need the tools, the equipment required just to track the inflow of funds you're talking about.
Hmm.
You can check in the system, to raise red flag, suspicious transaction.
Hmm.
That's what he's talking about. If a bank is someone is withdrawing or depositing but 10 million Liberian dollar in a day when there's no company, no bank established anywhere on those transaction, that's
Hmm.
suspicious transaction. Automatically
Yeah.
supposed to be tracked. You
Yeah,
know.
that I agree with you. With that, I agree with you.
So
As somebody who works in the banks as well, at
yeah.
some point at the beginning of my career at the retail level, that's something that's something you do, right? As I always tell people this story where we had this, I won't. He's actually from Asia, Asian guy. He will go to one branch and deposit 9,000 and maybe $80 and then go to another one and deposit that. So the banks begin to track him. And sometimes when he come, he will stand in the distance and watch to see who's on the line, who the teller is, whether they're going to, because some teller will just deposit and forget that they're supposed to red flag it. That is, so stuff like that. You do red flag it, and once you red flag it, you send it straight to the monitoring place, and where they begin to track this guy activity now. Now you start comparing the size of his business to the type of revenue he's supposed to be expected every monthly or every year he's supposed to be getting every year. So those are from a
Yes, yes. So that's
fundamental level,
financial
those are the
flow. I
basics.
think Dwalo question will be in relation to that,
Okay.
obviously.
All right.
Let me
So
let me
let's go
let me
to
throw
another.
a question. Let me throw a quick question to Tio, and this is something that River Says Pro said way early on, which I kind of been thinking about. So he mentioned that he believes that, or he was asking a question that corruption that we as Liberians are inheriting corruption from our parents. That is part of our DNA. That people are born corrupt. So I want to throw that out there. Do you think Liberians are born corrupt?
Gio, I think you're in the best position to answer that question.
Well, I don't want to agree with that,
Thank
Larry.
you. I too don't want to agree with it.
Yeah, I don't want to
Go
agree
ahead.
with that.
Yeah.
At times people develop their own attitude. People get involved with different kinds of things.
Yeah.
Not getting into them or not taking them from their parents or so.
Right.
So I don't want to agree with that, honestly. Yeah. Sometimes
Thank
they
you.
develop their own habits.
Thank you. I'm in line with you too.
Yeah, I
Should we
mean, I'm
say
totally
all Liberia
disagree
or
with.
some?
Go ahead. Say it
Dehpue,
again.
go ahead.
Should we say some instead of us saying all Liberian born corrupt? Because the thing
I
about
don't
it,
not I don't think no Liberian is born with corruption. I think it's just the society that we're in. We're born in it and we see it. We just pick it up as kids and we see people behaving and we follow it. This is why
look,
leadership is important and how we raise our kids. Yeah,
the
that's
value
my take.
system.
But go ahead.
And Dehpue was talking about earlier on. Dehpue was talking about this asset declaration thing.
Right.
It's also good for public officials. I mean, coming to government, we must know who you are, what do you have, and stuff like that. Even when you live in government. But at a certain point in time in this country, it became a serious topical issue. People said security was something paramount relating to that. So,
Mhm.
uh, they didn't want people to, declare their asset publicly, in order to avoid people going after them, So it became something,
That's
very, very,
important.
very, very serious at a certain point in time. The issue of security, was mentioned in it, and people look at it from different perspectives.
What do you
So
mean by the issue of security?
So if you
meaning
have
if I'm declaring my asset, stating that I have XYZ, perhaps somebody could just come after me, at night or anytime.
armed robbers, yeah.
So people were skeptical about declaring the asset, and there was some level of control aimed at not publishing people personal assets.
That's a poor excuse, I would say. That's a very poor excuse. All right.
Theo, one thing I can say is that when you say you're worth, this person worth this amount, it doesn't really have to be in cash. It has to be in whatever asset you have.
Exactly.
So why can't you be
Okay,
very
yeah.
proud of yourself? Why can't you be very proud of yourself to say, look, my self worth is I worth $9 million, I worth $10 million,
Right.
and it's not something that someone will come after you to say because you're worth $10 million,
You have
meaning
all of
that we
that in
should kill
cash.
him and get the
Right.
money. That is a very
Mind you,
poor
Tobu,
approach.
you also have to take into consideration the issue of security back home. It's a major challenge here.
I, I I don't want us to go off a tangent on that. I agree.
Theo, Theo,
You guys have
no, no, no.
Larry, you have any comment
Let me
on that?
just make a comment. Let me just make a comment on that.
All right.
If we're saying because the place is not secure, so we can't declare our assets, then you already giving signal to the international investor or partner, anybody that look, the place is not secure to do any
Perpetuates.
business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you who own the country, you are official. You are afraid to declare what you have. Do you expect an investor to declare whatever he or she has in the system?
Exactly.
then you make it very difficult
Exactly.
and complicated for transparency and also doing business.
That
Therefore,
was
you
the
should be
excuse. That was the excuse from several government officials back home.
Yeah.
That was the excuse here.
That And I agree with you. That is a poor excuse. That is a very poor excuse. If that's the case, then in this great United States of America, you know how many people will be getting robbed? There's billionaires here who declare their assets, who we know how much they're worth. There are CEOs there, we know how much they're worth. Nobody's going after them to go. If what it does is just signal, hey, if this guy is worth that much and he got to this from that level, guess what? You will not become my something that I want to aspire to. Whatever he did, I'm going to aspire to that and do exactly what is that to be even better than him or be as worthy as he is or be something even better as him. It's just that whole excuse that, because of security, people are going to go rob you. I think Dehpue get a perfect example. Just because you have $10 million, 10, you're worth 10 million doesn't mean you have all of that in cash. You could probably have like, 5,000 in cash. The rest of them could be in different assets, real estate and Bitcoins and, properties, farms here and there. It doesn't mean you have all of that in cash. So that's a poor skill on their part that, that if you declare your asset, people are going to come after you.
let
Again,
me
that's
ask this
politician
let me
like
ask this question to bring and put the Theo. Theo,
Yeah.
have you ever asked most of the officials that own farm, that own car to know the value of the farm and the car? Because everyone there is owns something,
Hmm.
and don't we see it physically?
exactly. Why can't we go after them for their costs?
But you see, what Tio is saying, and this is what Albert Pugh is saying also in the chat. Societies, let me read what he's saying. He's saying societies create corrupt people based on the culture. Tio is saying that we have a culture in there where people can say some nonsense like this and
And
people
we
will
can get
accept
away.
it
Right.
and get away
Exactly.
with it.
Yeah.
So the culture, in essence, have accepted, because there are times people will say, hey, this person stole this money, but you will still have some people accepting it, saying, oh, at least the man stole the money, but he built a house here in Liberia, not overseas.
Exactly. Sure, Larry. Sure.
That's the mindset that leads to people being even more corrupt, because it's society is accepting that kind of behavior as it being okay. What you see, the reason why you have places like Botswana is doing so well. Even Botswana came to independence, 1966 or so. Botswana now is a middle income state. They're trending upward. They're doing even a little bit better than South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Botswana built a society where the culture is saying, we're not going to accept this nonsense. When they grabbed a Botswana, one of the ministers at the airport, they wanted to handcuff this guy at the airport. He was saying, oh, don't you guys know who I am? They say, yeah, we know you're the minister. That's why we're handcuffing you right here in the public.
Yeah.
That would never happen in Liberia. They
Yeah.
grab him, handcuff him, and they took him away because the
Yeah.
society has accepted that we're not going to take corruption. We're not going to accept corruption at all.
Yeah.
So I think,
And just to add up, go ahead, Larry. Sorry for the interruption. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just to
And just to add to what
River
you're
Pro was saying, because River Says Pro, what he was saying, I don't think it's hereditary, River Says Pro. I think because, first of all, you have to understand the philosophy of it. Anybody in their right mind will always do something that is in their best interest. It's a given. Not unless something is wrong with you. There are very few people who are truly, even some of the most altruistic people, they would still want to do something, whether it's for notoriety. When Bill Gates is giving millions and millions and millions, he's doing so because, of course, it gives him sort of a good feel, right? People will always do what is in their best interest. The reason why we have laws in place is sometimes your interest will be greater than the interest of others, and it will harm others, right? It's a society. There's a reason why if Tio right now, if Tio is driving around in Monrovia, on the third lane or whatever, when Tio come to America, you think he would try that?
Nope.
No. Tell me, Gabriel, why he wouldn't try that in America?
It's a different culture.
Different culture. They would grab him, throw his butt in jail the first time, and he would never do it again.
Because they're laws as well.
Exactly. But when you have people accepting it as a behavior in a society, meaning the lawmakers are breaking that kind of law, then people just say, oh, it's endemic and nothing is done about it. Nobody can change it.
And
But
you just said You just said something, Larry. I was flipping through social media a few days ago, and I saw this structure, huge structure on social media, uh, belonging to a particular government official, and that structure was built in his county. And then reading through the comment section, somebody said, "But how did he get this money to build such a structure?" And then somebody also responded by saying, at least he didn't build it in America, he didn't build it in Ghana or Nigeria. It was built in it was built in Liberia and built in his county. So just as he was saying, Larry, that's it.
You see, Tio, that's it.
Yeah.
So when Dehpue is saying, people seem to. So these are some of the reasons why a lot of these emerging markets, they fall into crisis after several years. They're in this little endless cycle because of corruption.
It's always, yeah.
When Dehpue was saying early on that, hey, maybe 1 million here in Liberia will impact a greater proportion of people. People not seeing who was impacted by that person building that huge structure.
Yeah, yeah.
They're not seeing that, hey, we could have gotten vaccine to address some of these issues. We could have used that money to fix the airport, the electric grid at the airport. But instead they're seeing it, oh, at least they made, that's nonsense, absolute nonsense. Yeah. And it would be hard for investors to come to your country. When investors can't come to your country, you're not going to raise money, you're not going to be able to create jobs, and you're going to end up in this vicious cycle where you become what is referred to as a rentier state. We are, the money that the country is raising, a good portion of it comes from us renting our resources.
Yeah.
We rent everything. We rent the iron ore. We're renting that stuff. The fish,
port, yeah,
the port, everything. We're renting a nation. Yeah.
But let's continue. Thank you guys. I think that was a great answer to that. Let's continue with the comments here. I want us to go through that. This is, whoa, this person's watching us from Portugal, Lisbon. All right, Fridas. All right, we have another comment here from Dehpue again. He said lack of the free flow. I think this is the same comment he made. All right, anyone interesting here? This person said, just wait, PYJ will get a rude awakening soon. Yeah, I think he probably referring to what you're saying, that, sooner or later, they'll,
the only way to grab PYJ if the U.S. decide, okay, he was implicit. He was actually part of the Americans that got killed at that church. Part of that, the Hare Krishna group that got killed. So if that is really tied directly, and Americans are investigating that, if that is tied directly to PYJ, the Americans can come and grab him for that.
Okay. There's another comment here from Emmanuel. He said it's corruption, hodling, advancement in the energy sector, national forensic labs, or database for biometric retrieving of fingerprints, DNA analysis, better improve university education, diplomatic passports in the possession of criminals, corruption.
Let me touch on what my brother Manny is saying. And you guys, we know we've talked about this. This whole business of selling diplomatic passports, that is a major crime. Where can anyone think of a time where the Secretary of State, the U.S. Secretary of State, actually spoke out directly against a country? When Mike Pompeo spoke out directly against Liberia for selling diplomatic passport, when the time, what's his name, the former foreign minister was in there.
McIntosh.
Yeah, well, before McIntosh and Matt Brega, but the most recent guy who Mike Pompeo spoke out against because he was selling passport to, I guess, some Nigerian scamster who was representing Liberia in Mexico. You guys remember that one? Finley. The U.S. Secretary of State actually spoke out against the foreign ministry in terms of the whole passport scam. And then what happens? We bring in a new foreign minister, and we still have issues with the whole passport thing. Considering the U.S. is concerned with terrorism, that is a major concern. You see, Liberia keeps falling into this whole dark space with corruption, everything. People come out there, they call it governance, like we're lack of governance. They just want to say you guys are they're just corrupt.
Failed state. Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty much corrupt.
Yeah.
The government was implicated in a report saying that there were laundering money with Prince Johnson. Think about it. Government involved in money laundering, an entire government. That is bad.
Right. All right. So we have another comment here from Dualu. He said, I believe Liberia type of money laundering is direct. Direct from the government accounts official offshore account. The issue of email is not that prevalent in Liberia. Well, it hasn't been up until now. Maybe because we weren't aware of it up until now. And then he has another comment here. You can say the government leads the corruption space. The people only get involved because it's encouraged as an official policy. Do not put the greatest onus on the ordinary people. I don't think we're putting the onus on the ordinary people. We're saying in terms from a solution standpoint, how to, there come a point in time where you have to do something. And if you want to fix a problem, you go to the very roots of it. And that's what we're saying, that if you want to start this now, you don't say, hey, I'm going to start from just the top, fighting corruption, but you got to start from from everybody to make sure everybody's involved. And Jimmy Eastman, he said Liberia is not on the FATF. I don't know what that stands for. Maybe Larry can help. List of countries that have identified as having strategic AML deficiencies. So I think you're referring to the anti-money laundering efficiency. I don't know. I think every country has to comply with, know your customer from a banking regulation standpoint. So if I'm going to do business with Larry, Tio, or Dehpue, I have to know when I say know that person, I have to know your business, what you do for business, how long you've been in business, how much revenue that company is making. That's the basics of know your customer, right? So that way, if Larry or Tio or Dehpue open those business account and they're putting in 20 millions every month when the business is only supposed to be putting in $1 million every month, then it becomes a red flag. So that way I can raise a red flag because there's a expected amount that we expect, unless if he's not hiring additional staff to say, hey, he has increased his staffing level or expanded to justify that money level of money going in. Then and I say this to say that it is across the board globally. Every bank's supposed to comply with it. Now, does Liberia comply with it? Do we have the red flag law to red flag these things, to escalate them? And do we have the right the right authority in place to prosecute these things or follow up on these things to make sure people are not laundering money? That is the bigger question in Liberia.
But Gabriel, let me throw this question out at you guys. You think based on the weak governance system we have in Liberia right now, the weak judicial system we have in Liberia right now, you think that is creating an opportunity for more criminals? Or you think more criminals are being attracted to come and operate in Liberia?
Dehpue, I'll let you come in with that, then I'll answer, or I can go first if you want.
I think obviously we'll say yes because right now, Liberia, besides it's becoming a drug transit point, according to the report, we are also going to, when it comes to money laundering, is getting high because we have to we cannot be in a red zone as a country in terms of money laundering and expect anything to go right. I believe the weak judicial system, and weak governance is also contributing to that. But one thing I would tell you is that if we take action, uh, countries that benefit from this kind of a transaction, two things might happen. You have the international sanction, which is part of the governance system in terms of transparency or uh, anti-money laundering system. At the same time, one thing that's there is that many companies or countries that don't believe in corruption will stay away from coming to invest in Liberia.
Mhm.
So we have to work hard. Anti-money laundering deficiency problem in Liberia, we need to work hard. So we need to have a court system that prosecute people. And that's why I keep saying that the government need to be very strategic in its move. Imagine the judiciary system, the entire judicial branch of government
Mhm.
is appropriated $18 million,
Yeah.
while the Ministry of State, which is just a one entity, is receiving $20 million. These things I think that is that we deliberately kind of making the transparency and judicial institution, rule of law institution weak
Mhm.
so that they cannot perform.
Mhm.
And that itself is not helping us. So we as a nation, as a people, we need to work on that to
Yeah.
improve it.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I just wanted to add as well, Larry. Definitely, I definitely believe so, and I think there's a example that Alex gave that actually speak to what we, on a previous show that we did. I actually maybe answer that question, where they were doing investigation as a financial intelligence units. They were passing these cases up to the higher authority to, you know but these things were being people were being shut down. Like it's like, you are my boss, I'm investigating a case, escalated up to you, instead of you following up and say, okay, let's go deep into this case and follow up what it is. There will be people from your side now, instead of you encouraging me, you're fighting me, like, to drop the case, even though I know this is a legitimate case that needs to be prosecuted. And I agree with you, this is stopping people from going. Listen, I work in the financial sector. I mean, you did too, right? You do too. Laundering money, it's so easy. It is so easy to do. I don't want to talk about it here because it's so easy to do. Just how you see those businesses opening in Liberia. If I want to launder money, I can go open a construction company in Liberia, right? Liberia is the perfect case where you don't follow up on it. I can say that that construction business I'm opening is building houses, is doing real estate, doing all these things. I can be washing money right through it, right? Using that business account that I opened to be taking people money and saying that's business deposits. Well, in reality, it is not. Do we have the right banking regulation in place, whether it's from the central bank or from whatever money anti-money laundering unit, I mean, AML unit we have in the country, that were are able to red flag these type of accounts to say this person, we're investigating this type of business. This person business is not capable of making this type of money within a month or within a year. To red flag it and monitor it until they can gather enough evidence to prosecute that people. No, we do not. And that's what we have in developed countries like the United States, the West, and other advanced countries. They have those systems in place. In Liberia, we don't have it. So it makes it easy for people to go to Liberia and and carry out corruption there and launder money in there. So definitely, yeah.
Let me piggyback off of that based on what Trent Power is saying over here. He's saying to score extensive success in anti-corruption strides in Liberia, the president must be involved. So the question becomes, do you think the president is interested in seeing corruption eradicated or reduced in Liberia? You think we are interested in that? Because then if you're
Absolutely.
talking about the AML and all that stuff,
Right.
you need a champion. You need someone to really push for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
Um,
do you think the president is interested in that?
Absolutely. I don't think he is. I don't, absolutely not. I don't think he's interested in that. I don't even think he understands that. I always say this thing that at one point we all believe that even though if he's not capable of doing the job, he will pick the right people around him to do the job and they will make him look better. But after 4 years, what we're seeing, I don't think he's interested in that. He should, like, you're right. And whoever made that comment is right. He's supposed to be a champion. If there's something that is plaguing the economy, right, where is reaching up to him, up to his vice president, right? He's supposed to be able to come out and make a statement. Say, this, I'm going to fight against this. I'm going to champion this cause, maybe even for the next year or so, to make sure that we really crack down on this, uh, money laundering, and pretty much be the face of that, of that fight. But since this thing come out, not a statement, not a comment, nothing from him or anybody in his administration. So that tells you, hey, either they're just clueless or they're just, you know, uh, they're just comfortable in their space, because we as Liberian, we're kind of like a passive group of people. We just make noise here and there, and then we forget about it, So we made noise. Now nobody's saying anything about it, so everything just fly under the radar. So I absolutely don't believe that he is interested in this fight, and that is my position. Yeah.
Oh,
Listen, for me, I think Theo earlier said that, like Brumpo said, that there should be no declaration because people will go after you, and that was an insinuation of the president's own statement and not to declare his asset. But let me say this clearly: I think President Weah did not give policy prescription on corruption or didn't promise the people that he's going to fight corruption. Unlike President Saleh, who declared corruption as public enemy number one and later have some challenges. So for me, there should be no high expectation from Liberian people that he, President Weah, will fight corruption. And another indication that you have to look at it clearly is that had he had a thought to fight corruption, the first thing he should have done was to audit or call for public declaration auditing the past administration. But the fact that he didn't take any of these action, there should be no high expectation from the public and from the Liberian people that indeed he's there to do it. Because I'm sorry to say, it's being realistic and looking at the history. There haven't been any public statement or policy statement
Thank you.
on him as a president to say, I'm going to do this.
Mhm.
Or during the campaign to say, I'm going to do this. So that you can use it to measure or to rate him to guard your own evaluation and say, okay, this is the indicator and this is what we're going by. So in terms of corruption, in this administration, it should not be something of high expectation. What we can do is to see how best to raise the alarm and put the officials and be a government official or private sector to just raise the alarm. But for the president to say he is going to fight corruption, I don't see it.
Yeah.
It hasn't been anything to pronounce. No.
Thank you. So I have another comment here from Jimmy Eastman. He said, however, Liberia is considered a high risk due to crime and civil unrest. That is true. Maybe.
Yeah, I think when you look at the U.S. government travel warnings, you would see that they're always talking about Liberia being high risk because of crime. That's the major thing to talk about too.
Yeah. And Dwalo here agreeing with him. We have Afon, or how you say your name, Benny. Said lazy. Hey, Lord Jesus. Lazy opposition with their complaining, but they destroy and ruin our country economic past till now. Thank God for President Weah administration for opening our eyes. I guess that's a staunch supporter of Weah there.
Yes, but sometimes it's also good to look at this. Maybe the writer is talking about opening our eyes. Open our eyes to what? So maybe
You
opening
you
our
want you
eyes
want to call
to
him out to elaborate on that? I think I too want to hear that. I want him to elaborate.
So if Benny is saying that the opposition is being lazy because they're complaining about corruption, the flip side to that is we can say, well, he's being strong because he's in favor of corruption.
Checkmate. I think that's a better checkmate that we can ever come up with. Benny, please. We want you. We're here every Saturday. Please. We take every comment from everybody, from whether you're opposition or not opposition.
Yeah,
So we all your comment. Thank you.
Gabriel, I know that we came with this topic, but I was trying for us to see whether we can look at, since the impact, we can look at specific sector to see how corruption is affecting the sector.
Yeah,
And
I think
I know that the listeners were.
Okay.
I would just, yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
You see, the education sector is one area where, despite the fight against corruption, not being seen vividly is one area where no matter what we do as a country, we need to focus. Corruption in the education sector. And the impact is more deadly in short term and long term. One thing I can say here today is that the young junior comrade again always call him academic police, Martin Colley. I usually chat with him and say academic police. You see that many of our professors, head of administration, head of universities across the country, majority of them credential been considered as fake. Do we really see it as a problem in terms of corruption? How serious are we to go after this? Because the reality there is that if you cannot declare or you don't have an authentic degree and come and let the people know that you actually hold this degree and you become an instructor or teacher, you are not teaching one or two students, you're controlling hundreds of students. In the end, it go deeper to the society, it has ripple effect, big high magnitude on the economy. In terms of the economic cost, in the short run will be, yes, poor performance of the student, some of them will fail. And in the long run, it's practically, you're talking about weak system, low performance. And low performance will also lead to what? High risks of crime.
Yeah.
So why can't we go after that? Besides education that we're looking at, today everybody crying LEC, LEC. You think is LEC just having problem because
They feel like
we?
having a problem, right?
It's just because of corruption.
Yeah.
Corruption is killing us. We need to see how best we can fight this by sector. The sectorial impact, sectorial analysis is something very much important for us to look at.
No, I agree with you, and I think there was I think I had a conversation with somebody who said that we owe the I don't know how true it is that we owe the Ivorian government for electricity, that since the administration took over that we haven't paid. So that may be they speak to the bigger um, you know issue to LEC, why LEC, it's just like a lightning. When it strikes, it doesn't strike again until maybe when it's trying to rain. That's when you get a lot of people get consistently the LEC. But I mean, we can look at it from a sectoral standpoint. I agree with you because again, an hour 30 minutes does not even it's not even like a drop in the, it's like a drop in the bucket in terms of the time we need to discuss how impactful corruption is to our economy. You can look at the the education, as you mentioned, the airport, the core system. How we would, like, I think you the one who mentioned earlier that we don't even have a commercial court. The one that we have, they're very corrupt. So it like if we look at it from sector to sector, we will spend maybe we can talk about this for an entire year and make it an entire year topic. But I think I agree with you. Looking at it, we should look at it from a sector to sector. That way we can break it down, which I think we didn't do. I agree with you. We didn't do it from the beginning. Maybe we should have just pick a sector,
Yes,
focus on it, and look at it from that standpoint. Go ahead, Tio.
yes, Gabriel. When Dubo was speaking, two quick questions came to my mind when he talked about, fighting corruption sector by sector, where he highlighted, public officials, credentials, sorry, coming on a question. Two questions came to my mind, like I said earlier. The first thing is, how are these people vetted? And the next thing is, who's making those recommendations for appointment in government? I mean, come to think about this, why would somebody, serve as a minister or deputy minister in government, and then your credential is under question, especially in the educational sector? I mean, these are questions we should be asking.
Tio, I see why you're a reporter, my man. You know how to ask the right question. They kind of reporter when they stand in front of a politician, they ask them one question, they just turn away and start walking. They can't answer it. That's
Okay,
You
those
know,
are the
Larry,
I was
that's
shocked. I was shocked.
I want
I was
Larry
so
to
shocked
talk
quite
before I
recently.
come.
Larry. I think
Yeah.
those are two sound bites you can go off. That's a great
So
question, Theo.
Theo, let me flip it another way. You can think about this. First, I would give you an example. Well, in fact, I'll flip it first, and then I'll give you an example. So, someone presenting credentials that they know is completely false, that is fraud, right?
Hmm.
We all can agree on that. So, we are right now, the country is engrossed. Everybody's kind of focused on CPP fraud, but we have this level of academic fraud taking place consistently. And if it wasn't for Martin Coley and his team bringing this thing up consistently, we wouldn't be aware that some people passing off as highly credentialed individuals are having fraudulent degrees.
Hmm.
Recently in New York State,
Yeah.
they prosecuted a 38-year-old woman because she was passing off a fraudulent degree. So the Attorney General for New York State, they charged her with fraud because they're saying she deprived other more qualified people from getting that job.
Yeah.
These people are
Yeah.
perpetrating fraud. Why aren't they being charged? So it goes back to what we're discussing. If you're not prosecuting, if you don't have a strong judicial system prosecuting people, how many people right now are just shaking in their boots, afraid that Martin Cody is going to flush them out,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, these kind of things, then they need to be exposed, because if you take someone with a fraudulent medical degree and go give them a scalpel, they can end up killing people. This is the kind of thing we need to be very careful of. Someone passing with a fake and people were buying fake medical degrees in the U.S.
Yeah.
But when they get caught, they get prosecuted.
Yeah. Yeah.
You take a fake medical degree to Liberia, people start calling you doctor without even knowing that you have zero experience, zero hands-on knowledge whatsoever.
Yeah.
And they accept it. So Dehpue, you on point in terms of looking at corruption in various sectors.
Yes.
And when you brought up Martin Coley, that would probably be somebody we bring on board one day.
That's what I
and start exposing some of these people. Then this is absolute nonsense. I mean, the country is just corrupt to the core, And I still disagree that we're not born corrupt.
And like you mentioned, Larry, these people are depriving qualified and competent Liberians of occupying those positions.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, one of the things the reason why I raised that, despite the effort by the Liberian young team doing that, Sierra Leone had taken an action already by the Higher Commission Education in Sierra Leone, asking all those with fake degrees or all those with credential problem either resigning or bringing credential. Now they are doing credentials audit. What is the problem that we cannot do that? And the reality there is that Liberians feel that this relationship problem, this man is a relative of this other person, and therefore, if this person is affected, it have impact on the rest of the people. We have to. For me, I think the educational sector, health sector, corruption in these two places is a human capital development areas, and any corruption there has direct impact on the life of the people.
Yeah.
So you have people working in the health and education sector. If you do anything in the energy sector, it takes a longer time before they hit the human capital, before it hit the population. But any corruption in education and health is a direct attack on citizens. So this is why, yes.
Help me understand something, Tio. You guys help me understand something. People were chanting a couple of years ago that book we would eat, but then everybody running around buying fake degrees. So if you're not going to eat book, why the hell are you buying fake degrees? Why is it so important, right? Because you're not going to eat book.
Yeah.
I mean, the country is just something interesting.
Theo,
the fun about this question you asked is rhetorical, but the thing about it is that the perception that people have about governance was that anyone can do it. Anyone can run an office. They didn't have the second thought that there are technicians needed to do the work. And before you become a policymaker, you might have been a technician, knowing more about the policy before you become policy decision maker. So these things and the whole merit system in our country have been eroded completely. And I was speaking with some official, senior official, security official, were telling me 2 days ago that look, it has become very, embarrassing that we don't know where to start with investigation because the corruption is so bad. People who came in offices with the hope that they're going to reform, none of them have a skill, and they bring in things that they don't know anything about. They are not informed. They are not knowledgeable about the work. Therefore, it's difficult for us to work in the system. Imagine that. So it's something. It's something that we have to be looking at. And for me, I think sectoral approach, hitting the education and health now to restore the future of the country is very important. How many people are dying from fake drugs? Medical malpractice, and all of these things every day. Students who are graduating cannot perform, and these are things that we need to look at here for the economy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, thank
Dehpue
you.
is right on that, man. The fake meds and all that stuff, those things are harming the people greatly because people are dying from things like hypertension. They're taking fake medication on that. So yeah, Dehpue, you're right on that.
No, I absolutely agree. And Tio, thank you for bringing up this question. I think that is, those are, I don't understand how difficult, without trying to spend too much time on it. I don't understand how difficult it is for somebody to say, I applied for the job. Hey, here's my degree. How difficult it is for you to pick up the phone, Google the university name, and ask just, hey, I'm such and such for this, did this person really graduate from this, school? How long did they attend this school? How difficult it is. We just give people a job without validating their degree or even doing any kind of due diligence on the individual, which is,
But there are some positions that are so sensitive that you got to do to. But remember now, this is the same government, the same country that went and brought in and ratified into law deals from a non-existent finance company called Eton.
so
So
touche.
it was ratified into law. No one took the time to simply say, does this company exist? In this day and age, you can even go to the Singaporeans website and you can see whether the company existed or not. They didn't do it. They came to brag about, oh, we have a deal where we're going to raise money to build the roads. They didn't vet that. Now we're expecting them to kind of vet something as basic as someone's education, when everybody's bragging about it.
Mhm.
There are some positions where you really need to be mindful of. The airport is so serious right now. If for whatever reason SN Brussels decides to stop flying to Liberia because we have this whole issue of blackouts,
Mhm.
it's going to hit our entire productivity in our country dramatically because diaspora Liberians flying to Liberia bring in a lot of money.
Mhm.
They bring a lot of cash that helps the economy. If they have to spend extra money to fly through another country, and then it's going to discourage travel, and that's going to have a huge impact. We can't fool around with the airport. We need to get that straight. The healthcare sector, a lot of older Liberians traveling to Liberia would like to have a credible healthcare system. The education system. So Dehpue raised a lot of good points on these different sectors we need to look at. But, it's sorry to say it is what it is in Liberia. And I'm not sure anything is going to change from now until 2023.
Yeah. So there was a follow-up to a question here that somebody asked, and I think another commenter had a follow-up, response to that I want us to look at. So I think that was from the sedition, I guess I can call him that, who asked that question. And then I guess Sam Waller um, answered that question by saying, what I hear the commenter saying is the opposition talk all day about corruption and yet has no example of its own effort at curbing corruption within their own ranks today that they can point out to as an effective model to follow or apply. Instead, they are in court accusing each other of corruption. That is what I heard the commenter say, and I think he's referring to Benny comments about, George, we are doing very well. Do you guys care to comment on this? This might
I
touch.
would say something real quick.
Uh,
Sam, that is what we refer to as a false argument.
mm, thank
Because
you.
it's a false argument because you're pivoting from focusing on the problem that we're looking at, which is corruption right now as it exists, by drawing our attention to something else. So
Mhm.
you're not addressing the main issue. You're simply saying, hey, but look at these guys. It's a false argument, what you just posted.
Yeah.
So if you can tell us how you feel right now about corruption, what the U.S. government has said about this administration with governance, the Global Magnitsky Act, PYJ being sanctioned, the corruption that Tio just brought up, Dehpue just brought up in the education sector, all of those things with this government. Don't talk about the CPP because talking about that is a distraction, is a false argument, what you're doing whatsoever.
Yeah. And Tio, I think you got a fan here in Emmanuel. You said Tio, very brilliant journalist. Um, all right, so I think this is the end of the comments here. I think.
Yeah,
No, we have the
let
last
me.
one here. The last Liberian president who followed, I don't FOI or NOI. I don't know what's the acronym stands for. Was Taylor, who now sits in The Hague. I would not encourage that at all. What do you guys have any idea what's the FOI or NOI?
No, I'm not going to argue with Dakula. That's a smart man right there. If I say something smart, he's going to come back at me.
Okay.
That's my brother
So
Dakula.
before I know what we are approaching wrap up time here, but I think the bigger question that we needed to answer today is I mean the question that we had to that we were answering today is addressing the impact of corruption on the economy. Now, I know we've covered a lot. I think at some point we went off tangent and talked about other things, and I think Dehpue brought us back to say we should look at it from a sectorial standpoint. Um, so my question to all of you here, and myself included, is as it stands, with all else being equal, what do we need to, what do we have to do, either individually or as a country, or even you can even look at it from an opposition bloc, this current opposition bloc need to do to say, hey, this is how we begin to chip away at corruption, you know, personally and collectively, or as a political institution.
Yes, earlier wanted to comment on a statement on opposition. Let me just make a quick comment before I get to your question.
Right.
You know, one thing that this current government has done and weakened itself is shifting blame on opposition and not realizing whatever challenges that they face. As an individual, what is good always is to do self-evaluation,
Mm,
self-assessment. In fact, that's why World Bank, the rest of the Africa Development Bank, do self-assessment. You self-assess your economy, self-assess yourself to see how you're performing socially, economically, politically. That is to help you instead of shifting blame all the time. You have to own to your mistake, own to the challenges that you face every time as a human being. That makes you a great leader. Sometimes your subordinate or under men will challenge you. You say, okay, what is it? Let's sort it out. What's the solution? That helps. It's the same thing with governance. When you have opposition making statement, you call for meeting. Okay, what do you think? What's your recommendation? Instead of you trying to, ridicule them and try to challenge and go after them all of the time, it makes you not to perform. Now, the issue of solutions. Solutions are there. One is that, just as I said, we should look at ourselves and say, how far have we gone with this? Where are we as a country? How is corruption affecting our economy? How much dollar are we losing on a daily basis as a result of corruption? If we sit and ask, just the time management alone, as we speak, most of the revenue collect, most of the people that work in government offices don't go to work on time. And if they don't go to work on time, what is happening to productivity? Productivity decline. So it's also affecting revenue collection and therefore performance decline. and it was also leading to poverty. So how do you do it? Hold people accountable. When to come to work, when to leave office, what they do, even though they come to work, what do they do? What will be the daily output? That is part of the starting point for us to do it. And you want to hold people accountable for what they do. The court system is there. While the court system is also weak, we also need the citizens need to also hold each other accountable. Community meetings, community leaders. What happened to the money? Some communities they collect money. And it's one thing that is clear that some community leaders they collect money, they escape and go to different communities. Say the person had traveled.
Mhm.
And you go into the system, the guy has gone to another place to live there. Now, so how do we tackle that? Naming and shaming is another way. So
Mhm.
people need to start that. We all need to work on that, and that will help us to build our economy. In the
Yeah.
education sector, I think the credential audit is very much important. The same thing in the health sector. And I will tell you, people are dying in that country from medical malpractice. I've been victim of that. It happened to my sister before. 2 months after graduation from college, she died under surgery. That is something that I can tell you clearly. We need to go after it. And these two sectors are major, major priority to me. Look at what is happening to JFK right now.
Mhm.
JFK is becoming an embarrassment. The head of JFK is someone that I respect so much. He's been a very good man, Dr. Brown. But I think he's caught into a situation that he cannot handle, according to Mo Ali. He's been caught into a situation that he cannot handle. With limited resources, the place is becoming chaotic.
Mhm.
Hospitals, people are being sent back home. They cannot get drugs, you know, because people take the drugs from the hospital and carry to their private farm and carry to their private pharmacy. What is happening? We need to tackle it. So accountability in the health and education sector is very much important. If we start with these two, that will save the younger generation and prevent them from getting into corruption and also save the life of many people in the economy. Thank
Hmm.
you.
Thank you, Dehpue. That's great, 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 great closing statement.
Yeah, let me just say something and then pass it over to Tio, and then you can close, Gabriel. I think one way it is so difficult to put in place any strong measures against corruption because you can, if you try to sanction, if you try to push for sanctions, the poor people suffer more.
Mhm.
The people in power are not going to suffer. So sanctioning really doesn't work because it will hurt the people you're trying to help. If we take lessons learned from what Martin Coley is doing and we empower the journalists, the TO, and some of these other radio stations to expose people
Mhm.
who are doing corrupt behaviors, put it out there, blast it. That will have some impact. It will not have immediate, it will have some impact because sometimes it's the public outcry in articles that can lead to people being arrested. So that's just some measure. Because here's the thing. At the end of the Civil War, there was an organization that ran a survey called peacebuilding.org. Peacebuilding.org ran a survey to see what were some of the leading causes of why Liberia went into civil war.
Mhm.
The second leading cause was corruption. People said it started off with tribalism because we know there was the whole tribalism issue, but corruption was the major issue. But rather than see corruption decrease at the end of the Civil War, it's like we haven't learned anything else.
Mhm.
Corruption has really gotten worse because people can openly now commit corrupt act and sometimes get cheered for it. So, I mean, the quick impact would be if you have a very good, strong leader that comes in and say, okay, listen, I'm going to enforce the rule of law. Because that was what happened in places like Singapore when Yu Kwan came in.
Mhm.
He made it mandatory. I mean, this guy was laying down the rule of law. When he grabbed an American teenager, said, for spitting gum out on the public sidewalk, we're going to whip you in the public.
Mhm.
He wasn't, he was no joke, right?
It wasn't playing, yeah.
He wasn't playing. So when you have China, as corrupt as China is, if China is willing to execute a billionaire for corruption, China, their too was taking it kind of serious. You would never be able to execute a 1,000 year in Liberia, let alone a million year in Liberia,
Millionaire,
you
millionaire.
know. But I think public shaming would kind of help. It may, but I think overall the solution is really good, strong leadership.
Mm-hmm.
The second answer that is something I've been saying all along. I said it on Costa's show. Um, we need to start training the 5 to 6 year olds right now in terms of what's ethical, what's morally right. So when we train that and we make that a grown behavior so as to grow throughout the society, because right now a lot of people over their 20s and 30s and so in Liberia, they're highly susceptible to being corrupt. But if you start investing right now in the very young people, within a generation, you can change the society completely.
Yeah. No, thank you. I absolutely agree with you every word that you said. Tio, um,
Yes, thank you, Gabriel. In order to end this menace in our country, I think all of us must stand firm, and corrupt officials or corrupt individuals
mhm,
from wherever should be prosecuted, in my
mhm,
opinion. Yes, prosecuted to the fullest when they are found guilty,
right.
you know. And then our leaders should also take the stand by leading by examples. They should
Mhm,
set some examples so that others will follow because they lead us, they govern us. So once they are in the right path, they are leading rightly, all of us will follow suit. So I think these are things we must do
yeah.
in order to minimize or eliminate corruption for our country or our society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And again, thank all of you. I think I agree with everything you guys said. For me, you know, um, I just think that it started with us. Like when I mean with us, I mean individually. Um, the reason why I say individually because uh, your life is a reflection whether what the life you live in a private is a reflection of what the life you live in the public, right? So if you were corrupt in the private, if you they put you in public office, guess what? It will just come out right in the open, right? So that's the reason why I said it starts with us. It starts with us. The reason why I wanted to say with us because if you look at, without trying to be political here, if you look at what is happening with Alex Cummins, right? This is somebody who built his career in public sector, never got accused of anything, right? Now, when the guy got into politics in Liberia, he got accused of all these, things that he was doing supposedly, and he held his ground, say, I did not do any of that. To the point people are now coming to say, oh, that he did not do that. The people that are accusing are now coming out to say he did not do that, right? This is somebody who like held himself to an integrity, who had integrity, who had morals, who built their lives over a character over a certain period of time, right? Now, if contrary to that, if he was somebody who was corrupt, right, and he joined this group of people who now turn against him, and unfortunately, he ended up doing something, and they actually were to put him out in the light, it would have just blown out because everything that he had lived doing, it would have just been in the public. This is why I think it starts with us. In order to hold somebody else accountable, to hold our government accountable, to hold our kids accountable, to hold our fellow citizens accountable, we must be accountable to ourselves first, right? It starts with selves. Then we can now light the light on somebody else's face and say, hey, I need you to be, to be okay as well. I need you to be to have integrity as well. But I can't go hold somebody else accountable if myself is not accountable to myself. So that's what in addition to everything you guys said, holding our leadership, I agree, impacting the right ideas into our kids, this generation, in order to, wipe out an entire generation of people that are corrupt. I agree with that. I believe the same thing that Dehpue said too. The schools, the healthcare, you know, um, uh, institution. We need to stamp out corruption on there. But I think in addition to all of that too, we also have to look ourselves in the mirror too every day when we get up to hold ourselves accountable, so we don't become
But
that.
Gabriel, I know we have 5 minutes to go, so let me take 2 minutes on this Alex Cummings thing, which is not one of my favorite topics. But
Right, right, right.
let's see.
Sorry for bringing that in, but I just, it was just a perfect example of what I wanted to say. Yeah.
But is it sometimes it may not necessarily be the individual, but it
Right.
could also be the people you associate yourself with. And I'm not talking about, his association with the CPP, but maybe
Right.
even within internally. And I'm looking at it from an investment thing. So take like some of the biggest financial crimes that we've seen in the U.S. It's not necessarily the CEO of the company that was actually behind it. Take Barings Bank, for example. This is where the Queen was banking at one time. And Barings failed because Nick Leeson, who was a rogue trader, got involved in doing something in options that he shouldn't have been involved in. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the head of the bank was actually part of the scam,
Right.
but it was a rogue trader who was involved in that. Take a look at Kidder Peabody. Kidder Peabody failed because you had a rogue trader, Joseph Jett, who found a glitch in the accounting system, and he was exploiting that. Doesn't necessarily mean that the head of the organization was behind it. So
Right.
it may not be necessarily Alex Cummings, but maybe the people he associated with are the ones who actually tampered with the document.
Right.
And I don't know for a fact. I was never in the room. I didn't see anything. But like you said, he's done well over in the U.S. At that high level, never been accused of anything. But maybe he just associated with some very bad individuals who turn out to not be very good for his reputation. That could be one way to look at it as well.
Right. No, I agree. And that I say the reason why I agree with you is to say, even if you ended up being associated with the wrong people, right? They might say, hey, by association, by this and that. But when all the smokes and gunpowders is all clear, your character should remain. If you're not corrupt, your character will remain in place. That's what I'm trying to say, right?
Gotcha.
Right.
But let me just correct Sam Wolo over here. So he's talking about the repatriation of money to Nigeria. So the money that Nigeria received is not from New Jersey, it's from the island nation of Jersey, which is good because if you have, and Sam, in fact, one of the largest law firms here in the U.S. was put in touch with the Liberian government to help them in this asset recovery thing, right? It turned out to be a big fiasco. I'm not going to go into details with it, but it turned out to be a big fiasco because, again, there was a lack of leadership to pursue this. The whole asset recovery team fell apart, and you saw some of the guys on the asset recovery team discussing it. Some of the lawyers who were in charge of running after this thing were people that we were, in good conversations with. The SG, he knows the whole deal of what was going on. But yeah, asset recovery is another way to repatriate money back to the government and let others know that if you do this, they're going to come after you and grab your assets, seize it, and then send the money back to the people. So yeah, the island nation of Jersey, in fact, was actually fighting the Nigerian government because this money that was stolen by this dictator, I can't think of his full name, but I think you have the name wrong as well. They were actually fighting to repatriate that money. And there are a lot of Swiss banks that have stolen assets in there from African countries that are refusing to send those monies back to Africa. So it's a very complicated field, but maybe we discuss that in another session.
Okay, perfect. No, thank you all for, I think this was a great discussion. As I said, if we want to stay on the corruption issue and its impact, we can go in like sector by sector and go in every direction. We can spend a year here, but we don't have enough time to do that. So we thank you for staying with us for the hour 30 minutes, actually almost going up to 2 hours, hour 45 minutes. Thank you for staying with us. We appreciate your comments. We know we weren't able to probably go through every comment, and again, this is for the sake of time. Wherever you are watching us, we're here every Saturday at 3 o'clock. Actually, no, not 3 o'clock anymore, 5 o'clock, right? And I think that is 9 o'clock in Liberia. Again, thank you for staying with us. Do you guys have anything else to say before we?
Take care. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Yeah. So thank you.